Welcome to the IFA's virtual town hall. My name is Andres Denku, Project Officer with the International Federation on Aging, and will briefly review housekeeping. A reminder, this meeting is recorded and streamed live on the IFA Facebook page. This town hall begins with expert speaker remarks, followed by a moderated discussion. Please use the chat function to post questions, comments, or resources, and during the moderated discussion, you may be called upon to speak. Resources will be compiled at the end of the town hall and posted on the IFA Virtual Town Hall Resource webpage. Following the town hall, you will receive a follow-up email with these resources and an invitation to attend the next town hall in the series. It is now my great pleasure and honor to introduce IFA's Secretary General, Dr. Jane Barrett.
Thank you, Andra. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I have the distinct pleasure today to moderate a very special IFA town hall entitled Paving the Way to the Open-Ended Working Group, number 11, convened in partnership with the Permanent Missions of Argentina and Portugal, and in collaboration with UNDESA and OCHA. Today, the program will open with remarks from Chair-elect, Her Excellency Ms. Maria del Carmen Squef, Ambassador of Argentina, and the session will close with remarks from His Excellency Mr. Francisco Duarte Lopez, Ambassador of Portugal, serving as Vice Chair of the Bureau of the Working Group. Before introducing Her Excellency, I wish to thank AARP, HelpAge International, and Amnesty International for their willingness to share their powerful insights portrayed in videos that we will all see this morning. It's now my pleasure to introduce Her Excellency, Ms. Squef. Ms. Squef holds a master's degree in international politics and a bachelor's degree in political science. In 2008, Her Excellency was chair of the World Food Security and led reform to this very day is in place. That gives us all heart that she is a tremendous negotiator and has her heart in the job at hand. Her Excellency has served as Ambassador of Argentina in France, as secondment to the mission to support the peace process in Colombia from the Organization of American States, and also Ambassador of Argentina in the Federal Republic of Nigeria and as Under-Secretary for Mercosur and International Economic Negotiations. It's a great pleasure, Your Excellency, and you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barrett. Distinguished colleagues and friends, I would like to thank the International Federation on Aging for hosting this event. Today, we will have a substantive discussion about the themes of the 11th session of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, as well as on the impact of the COVID-19 on older persons. The pandemic has not only caused serious effects on the health and socioeconomic fields, exacerbating the existing inequalities between people and countries, but it has led to a human rights crisis with a disproportionate impact on older persons. The 11th session of the Open-Ended Working Group in 2021 will mark a turning point since after COVID-19. Nothing will be the same. I am committed to working very hard with the Bureau members towards the preparation of the 11th session. The pandemic is an urgent call to leave behind abstract discussion, promote concrete action, and improve the group's capacity to make meaningful contributions to face new challenges. I am fully committed to continue to work very hard to reinvigorate the work of the working group through open, transparent, and constructive dialogue among all member states to address the many challenges we have ahead. Last May, Argentina, together with Austria, Canada, Chile, El Salvador, Morocco, Philippines, Slovenia, and Turkey, led a cross-regional core group that coordinated a statement of support to the Secretary General's policy brief on the impact of COVID-19 on older persons. This statement, endorsed by 146 member states and permanent observers, is a clear example of how member states can join together to show their strong commitment to the promotion and protection of the rights of older persons. We look forward to continuing working with all relevant stakeholders during the 76th session of the General Assembly to raise our voices and strengthen our worldwide commitment to the rights of older people. The full enjoyment of the human rights of older people on an equal basis with others must be a priority to advance the achievement of the 2030 Agenda, leaving no one behind. Thank you. Let us now get started with our program. I am delighted to moderate the first part of this event. We will share 5 videos with you all, and I will invite the expert joining us today to reflect on those videos. As I introduce the expert, you will find their detailed biographies in the chat box. It also wish to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to AARP, Help Age International, and Amnesty International for the videos we will watch this morning. For the first video, we will begin with a conversation started. What is old? What is old? And I will ask Andra to please go ahead and play the first video called Change What It Means to Age. Thank you, Andra. Thank you, Andra. Now, please, let's welcome Dr. Shane Barrett, Secretary General of the International Federation on Aging. Shane, in your opinion, what does it mean to age?
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Aging is loving. Aging is living. Aging is going for it. But no person, young or old, is expendable. And that phrase was said by Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, earlier this year. Older people carry the collective wisdom of our societies, said Dr. Tedros, Director General of the WHO. And Dr. Nabarro said, civil society, hundreds of people that are listening to this town hall today play an important collective role to maintain the narrative that every life matters. It's those collective statements that I believe bring us here today and bring us to the open-ended working group in 2021. It brings us to the importance and the power of the voices of older people. Civil society brings energy, brings power. Civil society brings evidence about what's going on the ground, you know, with older people, for older people, about older people. You know, we also are witness to the policies which have cost the lives of older people before COVID and now have brutally exposed their lives as we live in COVID and after. The social and economic consequences of current and future generations are in our hands because we are witness to not only the rights of older people not being protected and respected, but we are at the heart of giving life to the voices of older people at the next Open Interworking Group. You know, all older people are different. You know, they're not the same. I'm not the same to you. But what we have a responsibility for is to fight for the rights of current and future generations. So aging means different things to different people, but it does mean living. And there is no greater moment than now to be unified toward a convention on the rights of older people so that current and future generations can reasonably expect to do what they have reason to value. So thank you very much to AERP and thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Dr. Shane Barrett. Thank you very much. Really, the conversation with your engaging reflection to the video, it gives us so much to think about. For the second video, let's now move to our second video and ask Andra to please play the video called Millennials Show Us What Aging Looks Like.
Hey, how's it going? You can stand right there, that's your mark. How you doing?
I'm great, how are you?
Great.
Awesome.
Just tell us your first name and your age.
My real age?
My name is Paolo. I'm 25 years old.
My name is Daniela, and I'm 19.
24. 35.
31. 33.
I'm 26 years old.
What age do you consider to be old?
Late 40s?
Maybe 50.
I feel like 30 is a new 20, so I'd say like 40 is old.
I'd probably say 50s.
I'd like you to show me how an old person would cross the street. Show me how an old person would send a text message. How might an old person do a push-up? What about jumping jacks? Okay, hang on. There's someone I want you to meet.
Hello, I'm Birch. I'm 66.
Hi, I'm Daphne, and I'm 68.
I'm Dee, and I'm 55.
George Fastbinder, 75.
Wow.
My name is Parvati. I'm 70.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
We're gonna give you about 2 minutes to teach each other something that you are good at.
I can teach you a jump that I do.
Okay, please.
Both of your legs go up, and your arm goes up, and your left arm goes like to the side. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Lift 1, 2, 3. And bring it to your heart. And bring it to your heart. Add the head in. Yeah.
You want to try to get your balance and raise up. Now you can bring your legs and your feet up. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. So when you come out of a turn, either way, you go back to that basics.
Over. Now forward. Over. Yeah.
Square it like this, and give me a hook. Hook. Jab, cross, hook, and then we'll go like this. All right?
1, 2, 3.
Now, what age might you consider to be old?
Probably 80 or 90. He could just do everything that I told him to do. An age that I would consider to be old now might be 100.
Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, I said in the 50s. I thought that would be old. But when I thought about it, like...
Wait a minute. Can I tap I can do it? It really changed my thinking of what old is. You've taught me something today. Clearly, there's no way she's old, you know?
Now I know from today, hey, I don't look at age.
At my age, I feel like I did when I was in my 20s.
There's so many things that I still want to do. There's so many things that I can do. As long as I'm growing and learning, then age doesn't matter.
When people start stopping, that's when they start getting old.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Daphne.
you. It was great meeting you.
How long have you been doing this? Is this a new skill?
40 years.
Wow.
Thank you, Andra. Now, please, let's welcome Mr. Gary Conning, who leads the work on the Saving and Planning Enterprise at AARP. Gary is also the Vice President for Financial Security at AARP Public Policy Institute. Gary, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to be part of this discussion today. To begin, I'd like to just tell you a little something about AARP. So AARP is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization in the United States. And we are dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live as they age. With about 38 million members and offices in every state in the United States, AARP works to strengthen communities and advocates for what matters most to families. We envision a society in which all people live with dignity and purpose over an ever longer span of healthier, more financially secure, and more fulfilling years. So I like that video. It's one of my favorite videos. And the reason it's one of my favorite videos is not because it is busting misperceptions of what it means to be old and challenging outdated attitudes and stereotypes about aging. It's one of my favorite videos because it shows different generations teaching each other. There is much we can learn from each other if we are open to listening to one another and not prejudging people because of their age. And that is true whether you are young or old. Innovation comes from collaboration, collaborating with people with different perspectives and lived experiences. And innovation is the heart of a successful society and growing living standards, which is important to all generations. The other reason why I like that video is because in a subtle way, it makes the point that we are all aging every day. The good news is that we are aging is changing mostly for the better. In general, we are living longer, healthier, and more productive lives. But living longer comes with the challenge of financing more years once a person does stop working. Old age government programs clearly play a key role here, but those provide a floor at best. In fact, a person's financial well-being at old age is determined by their ability to thrive financially at younger ages. That means having a manageable amount of debt, being able to access credit when needed, being able to save, not just for old age, which may be decades away for many people, but also for the short-term and medium needs, which allows us to handle the inevitable ups and downs of our financial lives. And finally, thriving financially means being able to plan for the future. Many challenges to thriving financially are similar for older and younger workers, such as the need for a quality job, or the right systems and incentives in place to make savings easy and rewarding. and also support for family caregivers. 1 in 4 family caregivers in the US are ages 24 to 39. And some challenges have grown across generations. Let me give you just one quick example in the US, and that is student loans for higher education. On average, a college graduate in the US today has about $30,000 US in student loan debt, and that debt carries over into his or her working life. If paying off that debt displaces money that would have been saved for retirement, AARP estimates that that would mean working 2 to 7 years longer compared to someone who did not have any student loan debt. So student debt is an issue for economic security at older ages in the United States. Further, student loan debt is not a young person's problem. Today, debt in the US has more than tripled in the past 15 years. And of the roughly 1.5 trillion outstanding student loan debt today in the US, about 1 of every $5 or 22% is held by someone 50 and older. And that debt was taken on for their own education or for, in many cases, for the education of their children and their grandchildren. So let me just conclude by saying the financial well-being of older and younger generations are closely tied together. And inevitably, the younger generations becomes the older generation, which is why fighting for the rights of younger and older people is so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this important reflection, Gary. You leave us with a wealth of information on engaging millennials and the importance of enhancing intergenerational solidarity. No, this is the point, the very important point. We now go to the first priority area to be discussed to the 11th session of the working group, the right to work and access to the labor market. Andra, could you please play the third video called Too Old for a Career?
I've been a woman and Black all my life, but not even that prepared me for the discrimination I would face once I got to be old. For more than 30 years, I made my living as an actress, but when I turned 50, and the casting director stopped calling, and my agent suggested that I gain 50 pounds so that I could do more character work, my response was, oh, hell no. So, I redirected my natural actor's curiosity into becoming a hypnotherapist. Most of my clients were women my age, suffering from depression, and I soon came to realize that they'd already been hypnotized into believing that women lose value and sexual currency as we got older. And then a funny thing happened. The positive suggestions that I gave my clients snapped me out of my own trance. Give up a career that I love and that I'm good at because I'm too old? Oh, hell no. So, after 30 years of working in television, I went back to my roots of live performing and reinvented myself as a performance artist and, drum roll please, stand-up comic. Now, I'm casting a new spell with a positive message about the vibrancy, vitality, and viability of women of all ages. Oh, hell yeah!
Thank you, Andra. I wish to now invite Amal Abo-Rafeh, Chief of the Program on Aging Unit at DESA, to share with us her reflections.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I love this video because unlike other experts, I get to say, oh, hell yeah. So what did we just see here? We met Marianne, an older Black woman. We don't know if the casting director's prejudice towards her was unconscious, implicit, or expressed. But what we do know is that it resulted in excluding Marianne from gaining equal access to employment. We know that Marianne is adaptable and resilient. She redefined herself in the world of work. Clearly, opportunities for reskilling and upskilling are crucial for older workers. Marianne was really keen on continuing to work, Was it because she wanted a sense of self-worth and dignity and fulfillment? Or was it because she knew that if she didn't generate an income, she would be out on the street? Or is Marianne also responsible for supporting other family members, an older parent, an adult child, or even grandchildren? Whatever the case may be, there is a need to put in place systems that support older persons to navigate their future with freedom from fear and insecurity. Much like Marianne's reference to a hypnosis that devalues older women, our societies are also dazzled by the suggestion that older people challenge economic progress. So as we head to the 11th session, let's set some records straight here. The share of older people in the labor market at the global level is estimated to continue to grow over the next decade. When appropriate legislation and policies are put in place, population aging can benefit economic development. Here's a mind-blowing example. 2 years ago in the US, people aged 50 plus contributed $8.3 trillion in economic activity. This was equivalent to 40% of the country's GDP that year. In the UN, we hardly mention older entrepreneurs, who, by the way, tend to start businesses at a rate that is comparable to or higher than younger entrepreneurs. Not only that, they're slightly more likely to employ 5 or more people, whereas younger entrepreneurs are, on average, slightly more likely to be running non-employer businesses. And finally, Your Excellency, we cannot discuss the right to work at the 11th session without noting that many older persons continue to work unrecognized by performing unpaid care work. Also, many are engaging in the informal economy. Worldwide, 3 out of 4 older persons are in informal employment. They often enter this economy not by choice, but as a result of a lack of opportunities in the formal economy and the absence of other means of livelihood. And how can we not mention that COVID-19 crisis has resulted in sharp rises in unemployment, showing that pre-existing inequalities determine how people fare during the crisis. And the irony is that with older persons recognized as the group hardest hit by the pandemic, we have seen older and retired doctors and nurses leaping to the call for help during this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Amal, for sharing those key messages on the future of work that are important to keep in mind as we deliberate on this topic early next year. I now ask Andra to please play the 4th video called No Donuts for You.
Hi. Hi. Just one question really quick. You're not over 40, are you? No. Perfect, great.
The age limit? I'm not under 40, I'm over 40.
We are not serving anybody over 40 today. We're trying to have a little bit younger vibe today. You are exactly what we're looking for. If you're under 40, I'm actually not going to take your order, sir. Thank you so much for your interest, but we're just trying something different. You're just not exactly what we're looking for.
Every day, age discrimination happens in the workplace behind closed doors. And we wanted to see what it would look like out in the open. So we hid cameras in a food truck and refused to serve anyone over 40.
Are you under 40?
No, this is for my daughter, it's not for me.
Oh, it's for your daughter?
Yeah.
As long as you don't eat them. Okay. Do you promise that you won't eat them?
No, I promise. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Actually, if you could just step away from the food truck since you're not under 40, and I'll bring you the beignets. I don't want people to get the wrong impression if you're standing over here.
Ridiculous.
You guys are under 40, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I can take your order. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I don't know what's happening.
This is a stupid thing that's starting to get really pissed off.
Let's go. Yeah, I mean, if you have a specific problem with somebody, then
Yeah,
say that instead
screw
of
you.
saying.
Stupid.
Okay, for real. Okay. Walking away, I felt really upset. I almost started crying. I was updating my resume recently, and I sort of wanted to sound experienced without sounding too old. I was like, oh, I'm experienced, but that's almost not an asset anymore. It's like I have to sound young and relevant.
Older people just don't really fit into our culture.
That's ridiculous.
We actually don't think that this truck is a good fit for you. I'm sorry.
I was outraged. This stunt makes me want to take action to help others who might be discriminated against because of their age.
Please let us welcome Rio Ada, team leader of the section covering human rights and economic and social issues of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I invite you, Rio, to share your reflections.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for this opportunity to join you today. You know, this video is probably my favorite among the ones that we've seen so far, because it has shown in a somewhat provocative way the impact of ageism and age discrimination. And you know, ageism is so widespread and prevalent in our society that many of us often fail to see it as a violation of human rights. But what if replace that donuts and coffee in the video with access to educational opportunities or legal aid or properties that you should be entitled to inherit, or life-saving equipment in the COVID-19? Will that man in the video who was visibly angry, will he take it to the court and seek justice and remedy? And will that woman feel empowered to do the same as that man? You know, older persons face many challenges in seeking access to justice and receiving remedies. Their complaints are often not taken seriously. Even in courts, some are treated with disrespect by court officials or being harassed by police. The proceedings take so long that some fear that they will die before their case is settled. Ageism is also prevalent in the infrastructure. Older persons experience physical barriers, court buildings lacking accessibility, transportation, and also when court proceedings are not adapted to older persons' needs and abilities and do not provide reasonable accommodation. Access is particularly problematic for people living in remote or rural areas, as most legal services are more available in cities. Digital divide is creating a new barrier for older persons to access to justice, as applications and documents are increasingly processed electronically. Gary talked about economic challenges facing older persons. And yes, many older persons face difficulty in paying for court fees and legal services to access justice. But that's not all. The social impediments are another challenges. Many older women have no or little access to justice system. Often, older women are ashamed to claim their rights through formal justice system, especially when it concerns family or relatives, such as inheritance of property or domestic violence. So there's an intersection of ageism, age, and gender discrimination that is severely limiting older women's enjoyment of their rights and ability to claim access to justice in court. So more efforts are also needed to increase the knowledge and awareness, both in terms of older persons themselves who may not know about their rights and how to claim them, and also for the judges and staff in the justice system who lack awareness and sensitivities concerning older people. Access to justice is an essential prerequisite for the realization of all human rights. Its concept is anchored in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and subsequent international instruments, and also guaranteed in the constitutions at the national level. But when it comes to older persons, their specificities are not addressed in general provisions under national and international legal framework that we have now, resulting in fragmented efforts to address the challenges they face. The two regional instruments on the rights of older persons in Africa and the Americas includes specific provisions on access to justice. These and the contributions received from all stakeholders could inform a discussion at the forthcoming session of the Open-Ended Working Group and our task ahead to further develop international standards that can guide our efforts to close the protection gap and enable older people to access justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rio, for making the link to age discrimination and access to justice, which will inform our discussion at the 11th session. This is a very, very important point. Before we move to the question and answer part of this event, we cannot have a conversation about human rights and older people without reflecting on the terrible impact this pandemic has had, particularly on older people around the world. Let's watch the video on aging during COVID-19. Andra, please go ahead and play the last video.
Somos personas jóvenes. Somos personas mayores.
We are all human.
Todos y todas tenemos derecho a la atención médica. Todas y todos tenemos derecho a la vida.
We stand together.
We need to stand together.
Thank you, Andra. Thank you, Andra. It is important to stress that the situation shown on this video happened all over the world. So these challenges are universal. Please welcome to independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights by older person, Ms. Claudia Mahler. Claudia, thank you for taking the time to join us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Excellency. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for hosting this important event and providing an opportunity for dialogue ahead of the 11th session. I think it is a great opportunity to get engaged with the chair-elect and to hear more from Portugal as a member of the Bureau. It is a wonderful opportunity to encourage governments to strengthen the human rights of older persons on the national, regional, and international level. The images and messages from this video resonate with all of us and show how the global pandemic really brought to the surface the human rights concerns and challenges experienced by older persons worldwide, including entrenched ageism. However, it is important to emphasize that these concerns were already there before the pandemic. COVID-19 has very much put a spotlight on the rights of older persons. And it has certainly framed my work as independent expert since my appointment in May this year. This is why my very first report that I presented to the General Assembly in October examined the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on older persons and the ways it has exacerbated existing violations of their rights. I encourage you all to consult the report, as the distributing images from this video show the pandemic has brought to light that older persons have been left behind without support, access to the needed healthcare, and died alone. Their concerns and rights have not been adequately reflected in the laws and policies. Sadly, it took a global pandemic widely exposed these gaps, including the extent of stigma and age discrimination faced by older persons. At the same time, this means a momentum to make older persons as a heterogeneous group visible let their voices be heard, and advocate for change that can have real impact on their lives. It has been encouraging to hear so many important stakeholders speak up about the rights of older persons in the context of the pandemic. And they also got in touch with me in my dialogues. Furthermore, we should see the Secretary General policy brief as a milestone, which was supported by 146 member states, with Our Excellency already said, and several NGOs and NHRIs who's reached out to give their support to the policy brief. Not to forget the Human Rights Commissioner and many UN agencies who included human rights of older persons now in their work and make them more visible. We have to amplify advocacy for a comprehensive and integrated international legal instrument to promote and protect the rights of older persons to ensure a dignified life. Therefore, we are here today, as said in the video, to stand together, to join our forces, to get prepared for the upcoming session of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging and make one step into the direction of a more age-sensitive and inclusive society. I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Claudia, for this powerful message and for focusing your report to the General Assembly this year on this very important issue. Thank you very much. I now hand the floor over Dr. Shane Barrett, Secretary General of the International Federation on Aging, to start the question and answer part of our event. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shane.
Well, look, thank you very much, Ambassador. I think that when you finish your job as being an ambassador, you can start being a moderator, because I think that was excellent. So thank you very much indeed. And also to, you know, the videos that prompted such passion, but also some very clear direction from not only UN agencies, but civil society. You and Ambassador from Portugal have attracted a lot of attention today. You know, we have, on the line, over 165 people, and also just as many on Facebook Live. So we're in for many, many questions. What I will do is I will call 3 people to ask their question, and then I will leave it to ambassadors and expert speakers to respond. Let's begin. The first 3 people I would ask to come to the microphone are, and forgive me for my pronunciation, I'm Australian, which is difficult to get my mouth around some names. My apologies. So the first one is Maya Soto, Delegate Permanent Mission for El Salvador. Then second, Justin Derbyshire, CEO of Help Age International. And then Matthias from the government of Germany. And Matthias is on the phone. So if we start from the top, Maya, the floor is yours to ask your question.
Thank you. And at the outset, let me express my sincere gratitude to UNDESA, IFA, Argentina, and Portugal for organizing this important and interesting town hall. Also, let me thank to the panelists for their presentation. Colleagues and excellencies and colleagues, I must say that I cry with the second video. We need this intergenerational solidarity and to change the narrative about aging. Regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, as was said, it is a fact that while the pandemic spread among persons of all ages and conditions, older persons are at significantly higher risk of mortality and severe disease following infections. This reality emphasized the urgent need to design and implement policies and programs, as well as devising adequate national, regional, and international legal frameworks that effectively and specifically promote the full enjoyment of the human rights of older persons and allow their full social inclusion as well as their participation in social, economic, cultural, civil, and political life, without any restraints and free from all forms of discrimination and violence. Will lead to ensure their dignity, empowerment, and their ability to fully and effectively enjoy their human rights and fundamental freedoms, actively participating in their societies and contributing for the development. Our country considers that this is also the correct time to have an open and frank discussions with all member states and relevant stakeholders regarding the lack of specific provisions in the framework of international human rights law regarding the rights and needs of older persons that often leads to a normative dispersion and the lack of international standards for the protection of the human rights of older persons to live free from discrimination of any kind and enjoy their rights on an equal basis with others. I would like to take this opportunity to express the support of El Salvador for the work ahead with the 11th session of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. Also, to ask some questions to the independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights by older person, Ms. Claudia Mahler. The first question is, increased visibility of the need for strengthen protection of the rights of older persons seems to be one of the inadvertent consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. How can we keep up the momentum and shore up support for an international convention? And the second question is, current developments in many parts of the world show the COVID-19 pandemic is not over yet, and some experts are already warning of future pandemics to come. What advice can you give to states for age-sensitive and rights-based approaches when responding to the health emergencies of this scale? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Maya. We now move on to Justin Derbyshire, and if we can keep, the questions and comments quite short, because we have 170 people that would like to have a conversation. So look, thank you. Justin?
Thank you, Jane. I'll get straight to it then. Justin, really appreciate everybody's input so far today and for sharing the videos, which were very powerful. Ambassadors, I'd like to ask each of you a question. Firstly, Ambassador Squiff, at an NHRI event earlier this week, you said that now is a defining moment to listen to older people's voice. Older people have told us at HelpAge International that their equal access to service and participation in society has been denied during the pandemic due to the lack of access to digital and online communications. Ambassador, anticipating that the next open-ended working group will be conducted, at least in part, virtually, what will you do as chair-elect to ensure that older people and their accredited civil society organisations can fully participate in the session on an equal basis with others? And turning to you, Ambassador Lopez, the adoption of the European Union Council conclusions on the rights of older people in October was a major success. Portugal takes over the European Union presidency next month and is working with a trio of presidencies with Germany and Slovenia. Portugal is also the Western European and other groups representative on the Open-Ended Working Group Bureau and a member of the Group of Friends of Older Persons in Geneva. Ambassador, how will Portugal use this unique position to accelerate progress at the Open-Ended Working Group and ensure it fulfills the mandate given to it by the General Assembly to put forward a proposal on the contents of a new international human rights instrument?
Thank you, Justin. You're certainly not a wilting flower, Justin. You're really, the hard-hitting questions. I'm just going to move to ask Matthias to come forward. Now, Matthias is on the phone. So, Andrew, can you help? Oh, okay, we've got you, Matthias.
That's great. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well, very well. So
thank you. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Excellency, and congratulations to being the new ambassador of Argentina to the UN. And thank you for your willingness to take over the chair of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. Together with Austria, Germany and Austria funded the update to the 2012 analytical outcome study on the normative standards in international human rights law in relation to older persons. OHCHR is currently working on the update. We think this study should be widely distributed and discussed, and also put on the agenda to be presented and discussed during the next meeting of the open-ended working group. As you might know, Germany is currently holding the Council presidency of the European Union. So we drafted Council conclusions called Human Rights, Participation and Well-being of Older Persons in the Era of Digitalization, and negotiated them with our European partners. In October, this political binding instrument was approved by all 27 member states of the EU, a major success. In the Council conclusions, the EU and its member states committed themselves to the right of older persons to full participation in public, social, and cultural life. They also include a link to the work and mandate of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. The Council invites member states and the European Commission to, quote, continue to contribute to the UN Open-Ended Working Group on Aging meetings and give additional emphasis to the human rights approach. We discussed this topic on an EU and international online conference in September with over 1,500 participants online from over 60 countries. This was a successful and also intersessional conference of the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. We continued discussing in the German government further about the rights of older persons and slightly adjusted our position towards that topic and how we will further act in the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. Germany will not only openly and actively participate in the discussions of the working group, but if there are gaps in the international system of human rights of older persons, we will engage to close possible gaps, in whichever way this might or could be. Looking at the next session, Germany would support the chair to negotiate an outcome document. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthias. I want to now return to Claudia. Claudia, Maya presented two questions to you. Could you respond, please? Then I'll go to Her Excellency and His Excellency.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Myra. I will try to make a short answer to these very broad questions. I think we should really use the momentum to strengthen the human rights of older persons. And from my perspective, it would be wonderful if especially states from the Inter-American system could also show good examples how the implementation of the Inter-American Convention brought good practices to the national level. And from my perspective, it would be good to show more examples from the national level where older persons have been engaged in process of decision making and have been taken into account to see how the new national systems should be approved. So please, bring examples to the open-ended working group so we can make the gaps and the violations visible. For the second questions, from my perspective, it is needed that older persons are be heard, taken into account in the new decision-making processes. If you are looking forward to preventive mechanisms, if you are starting to improve your current plans on the national level, how we could deal with next pandemics. And as you already said, we are still in the second wave. So there is already really much we can improve. I think I'll leave it here and thank you for the comments and thank you for your questions. Jane, back to you.
Thank you. And Claudia, some of us are not out of the first wave. So, we remain hunkered down. So, Ambassador Squeff, your response to Justin's question.
Yes, especially the participation of ONG and a national human rights institution. No, we are fully committed to the participation of civil society, and we will work with the Bureau in this regard towards the preparation of the 11th session. But really, we are open to listen some procedural or some ideas about the participation. And we can work with the Bureau about these ideas. I believe the best form to work in this way is, Claudia, the civil society proposed some way for real participation, and we work in the Bureau with this proposal.
You know, Ambassador, you have used those words many times now, you know, listen, collaborate, encourage. So you're really encouraging civil society to be part of this process. So we thank you. Ambassador Lopez, your response to Justin's question.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Yes, as you rightly mentioned, Portugal will have the presidency of the European Union Council in the next semester, so starting in January. And this is a combined, as it was also mentioned, it's a combined effort with Germany and Slovenia. So Germany has the presidency now, we'll have in the next semester, and then comes Slovenia in the second semester of 2021. So after this European Union Council conclusions on the human rights of older people that were approved under German presidency, as our German colleague just mentioned, now it will be up to us to start implementing these conclusions. And what we decided to do, among other things, and as a kind of symbolic way of showing the importance of social issues and human rights issues, once we keep on dealing with the pandemic, and once hopefully we start recovering from the pandemic in 2021, the Portuguese government has decided to call an informal summit of heads of state and government in May, precisely directed at dealing with social issues. And this item will be also looked at. Turning to the more wider or the more wide radar of the United Nations, and to the question on the proposal of a new international human rights instrument, you clearly know better than I do that we are not yet there. We are not ready yet, but we have been working hard under the chairmanship of Argentina in the open-ended working group. And I can assure you that we will keep on working hard because this is an objective that is more than necessary. And this wide open, this high opening videos we have seen show all of us very clearly that we need this new instrument. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and also to Matthias for his comments to Ambassador. I'd like to now call on Karen Dumpert from the Philippines, also Alan Graham from the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People, and Francis Zainadin. So if we can keep our questions tight, that would be helpful to the respondents. So Karen or Ellen? Sorry, I've got my order mixed. Alan Graham? Are you with us?
Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much. In fact, my question has perhaps already been covered by Justin Derbish's first point. It was about the participation of older people and civil society in the 11th session. And just to add that the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People has written to the Bureau with some concrete suggestions for the format and presenting some ideas for that. We're very grateful to the response that was received to that as well. So we look forward to continuing to input our ideas around that. Thank you very much.
Look, thank you very much. Karen from the Philippines.
Thank you, and good evening from Manila, and thank you for including national institutions in this town hall meeting. The Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines, of course, we're a proud member of the Working Group on Aging of the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions. Our Commission and NHRIs all around the world support the movement for a convention on the rights of older persons. We believe that the OEWGA in its 11th session should really aim to make larger strides towards achieving this particular goal. We've been working closely, of course, with the OEWGA Secretariat, DESA, OHCHR, UN agencies, governments, NGOs, and older persons themselves in national and international scenes to keep this conversation going, especially amid the pandemic. With the leadership of the National Commission of Korea, we recently concluded the global conference in up to the 11th session. There was really a general consensus among experts and participants that there exists a protection gap on older persons' rights, and a convention is needed to address these gaps. And we need this urgently. So I'm wondering what else we can do to support the work of the OEWGA Bureau and our governments in mission and in capital, so that the 11th session can deliver outcomes that will have a positive impact on the rights of older persons around the world. And for NHRIs whose governments have been on the other side of the debate for a convention, what else can we do, or what else can they do to advocate more effectively to their governments? We look forward to the upcoming session and fervently pray for the adoption of the intergovernmentally negotiated recommendations. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. And we'll go to Frances Zinedine and then back to the speakers. Frances?
Hi, thank you, Jane. This is Frances Zinedine representing the International Federation on Aging and the NGO Committee on Aging in New York. The General Assembly in its resolution 67139 in 2012 requested the open-ended working group to present to the General Assembly, and I quote, at the earliest possible date, a proposal containing inter alia the main elements that should be included in an international legal instrument, which are not currently addressed sufficiently by existing mechanisms. In subsequent years, the General Assembly encouraged member states to continue to contribute to the work of the open-ended working group, in particular by presenting concrete proposals, practical measures, best practices, and lessons learned that will contribute to promoting and protecting the rights and dignity of older persons in order to enable it to fulfill its mandate. The open-ended working group has not as yet complied with these mandates. What specific efforts will be made at OEWGA11 in 2021 to ensure compliance with General Assembly resolutions, taking due account also of the devastating impact of COVID-19 on older persons? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I go to Rio to respond to the question from Karen from NHRI?
I believe, ¿a quién le pregunta?
Yes, thank you. The NHRI has a very important role in protecting the rights of older persons and monitoring at the national level and collaborating internationally. So I think that one of the important thing that they could do is to, together with the civil society, foster more discussions with the member states at the national level, bringing forward the voices of older persons in together with the civil society, so that there'll be a more support and understanding in informing the positions of the national governments. And this needs to happen at many countries in all regions. And I think the network of the national human rights stations can play a great role in that.
Okay, thank you very much, Rio. Ambassador, a question from Francis Zinedine.
Thank you, Shane. We believe it's necessary to continue working, a lot with the recommendations in the first time for obtain on massive implementation of the recommendation. But we continue working to obtain the consensus for an instrument. Only with the consensus we can work with the idea, with the intention to obtain the best instrument. Without consensus, it's possible we have a paper without value or a value minimum. For this reason, I believe our efforts, civil society, state, stakeholders in general, work for obtain the consensus for the instrument, for the new instrument. This is our our idea for this moment.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very comforting. Ambassador Lopez.
Thank you very much. Just to add to what Ambassador Square just said, and I totally agree that we have to advance by building blocks. So the recommendations and the implement. So enlarging the recommendations, making them as effective as possible, and then implementing them is a needed first step. But back to the question of Ms. Zainuddin, and linking it to the participation in this 11th session of the open-ended working group, it would clearly help us to feel more pressure from the civil society. And as you said, this 11th session will happen mostly virtual and still during the pandemic. So it will probably make it possible for more people to follow the session, more people to participate, more organizations from the civil society to come up with their ideas and to being heard with their needs. And that will clearly help our job here in New York and here at the UN. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those firm and encouraging words to us, Ambassador. So that they're very important. I'd like to now call on Alex from Nigeria and Alana Armitage and then Mary Ship. So Alex, are you with us?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well, sir. You have
Thank you so much. I think I need to first, before I say anything, to pay my condolences to thousands of older persons that died during this unusual year that we find ourselves. If we know that this year has been has been a trying year, especially for the older persons. If we have been glossing over the issue of the human right of the older person before, especially the issue of the convention, I think the experience of this year have shown clearly to us that we need to now begin to promote an inclusive mechanism that will help to put the right and the privilege of the older person in proper context. This is very important for the global community. And I think one important lesson that we have learned from this from the experience of this year is that we cannot afford to leave them behind. We cannot afford to attend to other people, either the children, the able-bodied men, without getting into the consciousness of ensuring that this category of people, they need our attention. Because the empirical evidences during this particular year have shown that 8 out of 10 persons that died during this very difficult year we find ourselves are older persons. And what does this teach us? It tells us that they are the most vulnerable. They are the one that will be the first point of contact when we face challenges. So that is why it's important. I'm very happy that this conversation is going on. And I'm very happy. I want to thank Ms. Mayor very importantly, that his work is very important. And it's also good that we begin to put those recommendations in place and begin to work on them. And I'm quite happy as well. It's also gladdening the heart that the Secretary General in his report has clearly identified the need for both the national as well as the global, international, and the global instruments that will help us to put the rights and the privileges of that person in proper context. In Nigeria, for instance, I know we've taken some steps in terms of the fact that 3 years ago, our president signed Older Persons Act. Actually, we call it Senior Citizens Act into law, which identifies some areas that need intervention with regards to the older persons, and also ensuring that especially those that retired from public service are properly paid in terms of pensions and the rest. And we have also complemented that by ensuring that some of the palliatives and social intervention programs that comes with this COVID-19 are directly channeled to the older persons. So I want to say that we have reached a point where we cannot afford to gloss over the issue of international instruments. It is very important. This is the time we have to do that. If we have been sitting on the fence before, I think this is the reason, this is the time where all of us must come together, must work together, both the international NGOs and local NGOs. And it also gladdens my heart that last year, there's a declaration in Africa by all the African NGOs coming together under the aegis of SGA Africa, where it was agreed that Africa cannot be left behind, and the African NGOs should work collaboratively with governments in order to put in place this important instrument that will help us to clearly define the direction of the human rights of older persons and ensuring that we put them in proper context, both nationally and internationally. So I want to encourage more of this discussion. I want to ask that we begin to work together, especially during the open-ended working group that is coming, the 11th session, so that we can have a concrete outcome that will speak to some of the issues that we've raised in this conversation and those that we've been raising before. So that at the end of the day, it will not be engaging in rhetorical flourishes, but we will do something concretely that will help us to properly underscore the right and the privileges of the older person. I thank you all for this, and I'm so glad to be part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Alex. I think, just by the sheer presence of Ambassador here today, the chair-elect and the vice chair, that must say to civil society, that, it's an illustration of leadership, collaboration, cooperation, and solidarity. So I thank you for your strong words. I now call on Alana Armitage and then Mary Shipp. Alana?
Thank you so much, Jane, and buenos dias, bon dia, excellencies, colleagues, friends. On behalf of the United Nations Population Fund, it's been a real honor to participate in this powerful discussion today. My name is Alana. I'm the Regional Director for UNFPA's Regional Office for Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And as one of the UN agencies dedicated to promoting the health and rights of older persons at national level, I wanted to make one brief contribution and ask a question. I wanted to share that UNFPA has recently launched a new population data platform with geospatial dashboards, including one on COVID-19 population vulnerability, which actually maps where older persons live and where essential services are located. This is a living tool, and we really welcome inputs from the human rights community, including the voices of older persons and their organizations, and I'll put that in the link in the chat. On my question, we're also very much looking forward to the 11th session of the working group, and I'd like to ask Her Excellency, the Chair-elect, Senora Embajadora Squef, whether the Bureau might agree to reopen the call for inputs to enable those of us who may not have been able to provide input, member states, civil society, to provide new or updated inputs on lessons learned from COVID-19 to the resumed session. I understand it may be too late to include them in the working documents, but perhaps posted on the official website of the working group, which could contribute to enriching the discussion at the session. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jane.
And thank you, Alana. And please put that link to the geospatial program of work. It's critical that we gather data and we input into that. So thank you. I now call on Mary Shipp, and then I'll go back to Ambassador for response. So Mary, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. My name is Mary Lou Shippey, and I'm with Zonta International. I'm part of the New York UN team. And Zonta, as you probably know, is 100 years old now, and we've spent a lot of years worrying about everyone in the world, especially women and children. I think it's been a very enlightening presentation and shows the importance of collaboration, which we all need to do. I know the working group has been very busy, but I wanted to verify the dates for the 11th session coming up. And I think at least what COVID has done is it's made it possible through the use of Zoom for more people to participate. And I think that's really important.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. So, Ambassador, a question from Alana Armitage about the opportunity to I wouldn't say reopen input, but kind of reopen input. And then a question from Mary Shipper around, are you able to inform delegates here today, a confirmed date for the open-ended working group? So over to you, Madame.
Yes. Thank you, Shane. I believe you are two kind of information for share with the group. According to information provided by the Department for General Assembly and Conference Management, the 11th session is scheduled from 29 March to 1st April 2021. It should be noted that the calendar of conferences for 2021 is subject to approval by the General Assembly in December 2020, o sea, in this month. This is one thing I believe is important. The other thing, the Bureau of the Working Group met this week to discuss different aspects of the 11th session. The Bureau is working on the draft program and modality for the next session. When the proposal is finished, it will be placed under consideration of member states. We are working very hard to advance the preparation of the session, taking into consideration the exceptional circumstances. Really, we are fully committed to having a meaningful session next year. But I believe this meeting, today's meeting, is very rich. And really, I believe it's possible to receive more input for our work with the Bureau. And we have a draft we can share with the all members for regarding regarding for the conformity, for set if this is okay, or for the please take account other point reflected about that. No, very question possible after the group see the draft. But I believe it's important to receive something more before our working in the Bureau meeting. But I really, we are considering the last information for the report, the last report.
Thank you very much. And thank you for confirming as much as you can, you know, the dates for the next open-ended working group. We have one final question and then we move to closing this very informative session. So I call on Margaret Gillis, CEO of ILC Canada. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you so much, Jane, and thank you for hosting this, and thank you to the ambassadors and other speakers. As we've discussed, the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on older people around the world, and I don't think we can ignore the prevalence of ageism and the human rights violations experienced by older people during the pandemic, and I hope that that will be acknowledged at Open-Ended Working Group 11. Indeed, the pandemic has laid bare the urgent need for a convention on the rights of older persons. In my own country, Canada, we've seen a true pandemic of ageism, and the statistics are grim. While Canada's overall COVID death rate is relatively low compared to other OECD countries, we have the shameful distinction of having double the amount of deaths in long-term care. That's double, at 81% of the deaths in Canada from COVID. I don't think a year ago anyone in Canada would have believed that the Canadian military, like in Spain, would have to go into long-term care homes to rescue older citizens and would release a report of unimaginable misery and neglect. A report of older people left in their beds to die of COVID-19 unaided, or to die of malnutrition or dehydration in the middle of Montreal and Toronto, two of the wealthiest cities in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. A country known for its compassion and empathy, reportedly listed as one of the best places in the world to live, but not, it seems, if you are very old, very vulnerable, and in the wrong care home. And yet that's what has happened, and it will happen again if we don't ensure that the human rights of older people are protected and respected. We need a convention on the rights of older persons, and we need it now. This issue is crying for leadership and heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret. I think it's important to provide the floor to Ambassador for a response, and then we will move to Ambassador Lopez. So, Ambassador Square.
Yes, thank you. Really, the last speech of Margaret is very, very, very important. I believe to take account all of these points, and we must work in this way. Really, is the first thing we have the impact is COVID-19. This COVID-19 is very, very hard our us, but there are the other problems. We know there are the other problems. For this reason, we choose 5 videos in the different problems has the Asian person. No, in this way we must work in the way speech Margaret, and okay, we are showing our effort among us, because it's the only possibility to obtain some result in different aspects. Really very, very, all very, very complicated, no?
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and also Margaret, for you know, your passion and leadership in Canada, but also internationally. Ambassador, I think it's important that you know that across the entire 1.5 hours, there has been an overwhelming support for your leadership, you know, in the chat box, and the leadership of Ambassador Lopez. Very encouraging, but also you need to know that civil society are saying in the chat box that we're here, that we also want to be in the driving seat and collaborate and cooperate. So thank you. It's now my great pleasure to introduce for his closing remarks, His Excellency Francisco Duarte Lopez, Permanent Representative of Portugal to the UN. Let me just make a couple of remarks, So Excellency. you are the permanent representative of Portugal to the United Nations and have been there since 2017. Prior to this appointment, you served as Director General for Foreign Policy and for European Affairs between 2012 and 2017. And you've also served as Chief of Staff of the Secretary of State for European Affairs, prior to which, you were a diplomatic advisor to the Prime Minister. You hold many degrees, and I'm always delighted when I see, behind the bio that you have a family and you're a real person, Ambassador. So I look forward to your closing remarks and give the floor to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barrett. Let me quickly start by thanking Ambassador Squeff and everybody that made possible this event, including our independent expert, Claudia Mahler. We have heard today excellent presentations and also very thought-provoking videos on the challenges faced by older people. I want to refer to the themes that will be discussed during the next session of the open-ended working group. So, rights to work and access to the labor market, and access to justice. And we heard on both issues and how they hit older persons and how they are important for older persons, and also how they are essential issues to include in our recovery plan. The open-ended working group, as you know, was postponed from April 2020 now to end of March and beginning of April 2021. And this is not in a way a mere meeting schedule issue. COVID-19 not only puts in pause our relevant discussion on the ways to advance older persons' rights, but also has, and let me say, is the worst thing that happened to the elderly. And as we have also listened to during this 1.5 hour, I would like to recall here, as my colleague Maria del Carmen Squeff mentioned in the beginning, the policy brief of the Secretary General on the impact of COVID-19 on older persons. This brief clearly states that healthcare denial, neglect and abuse in institutions and care facilities, increase in poverty, impact on well-being and mental health, and the trauma of stigma and discrimination have been between the main devastating effects on older persons, bringing unprecedented challenges. It is imperative to minimize the risks for older persons by addressing their needs and human rights in our efforts to fight the pandemic, and then how we recover from the pandemic. Many of these risks are not new. Older persons have long been subject to inadequate protection of their human rights and overlooked in national policies and programs. That's why I strongly call on all of you to engage in the upcoming session of the open-ended working group to revitalize our work and set an opportunity to advance the promise of the 2030 agenda to leave no one behind. And Dr. Barrett, as you mentioned, that also the ambassadors are normal people with normal families. Let me end by shortly referring to my father. From these videos, we have listened and we have seen at the beginning, there was a phrase that I will surely keep in my memory. And this was when we listened that aging is living. My father once retired. So he retired when he was 75. He had been a farmer for over 60 years. And at 75, he decided to retire. And he was in retirement for 9 or 10 months. And then he decided to go back to work. He's now 98 years old and is still driving to the farm 5 days per week. It's his choice. He could be retired. But he decided to come back to work and to come back to do what he has been doing all his life and what gives him pleasure and brings him happiness. So really, aging is living, and is living the way that every one of us chooses to live, regardless of the age. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for sharing some of your life and the joy of your father at 98. So thank you, sir. The final remarks, Ambassador, from you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shane. I would like to thank the International Federation on Aging for hosting this very important event. My colleague, the permanent representative of Portugal, Ambassador Francisco Duarte Lopez, DESA, and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights for partnering with all of us in order to have this meaningful conversation. I would like also to thank you, all the experts that have kindly joined us today and share their invaluable contributions. Thank you, Claudia Mahler, Dr. Shane Barrett, Gary Conan, Amal Abu Rafeh, and Rio Ada. I would also like to thank you, ARP, Help Age International, and Amnesty International for allowing us to show their very interesting videos. And finally, but very, very important, a special thanks to all the people that participated from all over the world in this event. We look forward to seeing you at the 11th session of the working groups. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Ambassador. Across the last hour and a half with over 170 people, we've talked about narratives, we've talked about inclusion, building blocks, inclusive mechanisms. You know, Alex said that we cannot afford to leave anyone behind, you know, and we've reached a point that we just cannot gloss over what's in front of us. I think at the heart of the conversation, which is a very unique conversation, ambassadors, this has never ever before happened in my lifetime, that civil society has created a platform and ambassadors have been able to come and have a conversation. So just in that moment, you have created a groundbreaking pathway for us to be part of a global community. And as Ambassador Lopez said, you know, to actually be part of the revitalization of the open-ended working group, the conversations, and help drive the agenda. It is civil society that needs to also step up and walk towards, you know, a convention on the rights of older people. You know, as we close, I do also want to acknowledge, as Alex did, you know, why we're talking virtually so many times a day, that over 65 million people have been diagnosed with COVID, and coming up to 1.6 million people have died. And in as much as we grieve the loss of all of those people that died, we also grieve the loss of the identities and the humanity of grieving and death that many millions of families have been unable to do. So we need to think of those people and their families as we go forward. And my final comment is, unity can only happen when we're all walking together in the same direction towards a common agenda. I thank the IFA team, for which I'm indebted to every day of the week, you know, to Chesley Ryder, and most importantly to Andra Stanku. So thank you very much for all of us being here today and the work of people behind the scenes. And we will see one another virtually you know, at the Open-Ended Working Group. Ambassadors, you can count on civil society to be informing, cooperating, collaborating, being accountable, and being in solidarity. Thank you very much, one and all. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.